What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Total Takedown. This is Pub Sports Radio. These lines are brought to you by Superbook Sports, and this is for UFC 285. We're going overs, we're going unders. We broke down the entire card front to back on Monday, so go check that video out. If you want to see everything broken down for the entire card, it's right here on Pub Sports Radio. Click that little live show tab, and you'll be able to find it that way. We're just talking overs and unders for this episode, so buckle up. Let's go. First fight of the night, we've got Loik Radzhabov taking on Esteban Ribovics, and we've got a 2.5 total. The over 2.5 is plus 100 even money. The under 2.5 total is minus 120. Now, Loik comes to us from the PFL. He's known as a grinder. This guy is very tough to finish. He's aggressive. He can look like he's tired. He can look like he's gassed, but he digs deep and he drives forward and he keeps on going anyway. Esteban comes from the Dana White's Contender Series. He's a little low on experience, like most of these kids are, but he's got some big pop in those punches. He's going to be much larger than Loik in this fight. Loik's coming off a long layoff, so Esteban by knockout always seems live. The problem is I've got a hard time seeing Loik go down. We've seen him fight much higher level competition and have no problem eating big bombs like from Raush Manfio over in the PFL. So I want to rely on Loik's durability in this spot. The big question for me is, what does Esteban look like when he gets to the second or the third round and his opponent just refuses to get out of his face? Is Loik going to be able to go a full hard 15 minutes coming in here on short notice? Will he be as tough and as durable as we've seen before when he takes a short notice opportunity as opposed to when he's had a full camp? Those are questions I don't know. Total set at 2.5. I'm going to go with under 2.5 violence. I usually like to not do that when we've got somebody who's as tough and as durable as Loik is, kind of a decision machine that generally drives these things to the over. But with the short notice aspect of it, I think I'm going to look under instead this time. No bet for me on this one, just to lean on that. Farid Basharat taking on Damon Blackshear. We've got another 2.5 total here. The over 2.5 is minus 165. The under 2.5 plus 145. And I would be leaning with the over here on this one. Now, Damon Blackshear, even though he's a slick submission grappler, has really kind of been a decisionator in most of his fights. Farid, I believe, is incredibly tough, durable, dangerous, aggressive. He could be the one getting the finish here in this spot. But I think Damon is going to have a little bit better of a showing than the last time out. And this is the UFC debut for the younger of the Basharat brothers. I think this fight gets into the third round. It's a question of whether or not Damon falls apart late in the fight like his last fight did. So I'm picking Farid to win. It's a matter of, does he get him out of there or does he just grind him all the way for a 15-minute decision victory? I kind of think he makes it the distance in this one. I don't know that Blackshear is necessarily going to be going all the way out in this fight, but you never know. The pace the Basharat bros can put on can be something that just melts people. We've seen it before. So I'm going to say over 2.5 here, but if you wanted to go inside the distance with Farid or play that, round 3 or decision combo type of prop, I think that'd be a better way to look at it than playing the total. Tabitha Ricci taking on Jessica Penne. Total set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 300 in this case. Classic women's MMA. The under 2.5 is plus 250. I do think there is potentially some finishing upside. Jessica Penne actually has some slick submissions on her. She has big power clinch knees. Tabitha Ricci is tough though. She's durable. She's a good wrestler. I think she's going to put Jessica Penne on her back, and it's going to take everything the smaller fighter has in order to hold her down. I think that she's going to struggle to keep Penne on her back, but she's going to end up getting it done. This should be Tabitha Ricci by decision. I'll say over 2.5, but I'm not laying minus 300. Cameron Simon taking on Mana Martinez. We got a 2.5 total here. The over 2.5 is minus 105. The under 2.5 is minus 115. And I'm kind of leaning towards violence on this one. I think Mana Martinez, he's primarily a finisher. He's a guy that likes to get it done inside the distance. Cameron Simon also has that same type of aggressive forward pressure style. Now, he's a bit more of a scrambler. He likes to mix in the wrestling and the takedowns. We've seen that work on Mana Martinez. But Cameron Simon puts himself in bad positions. I think a better transitional submission specialist, somebody who can take advantage of those opportunities, will be able to catch him, and that's why I've got a sprinkle on Mana Martinez by submission in this spot. I think someone's going to get finished under 2.5 because of that pace. Let's roll it. Song Kenan taking on Ian Gary, a 1.5 total for this one. Over 1.5, minus 125. Under 1.5 is plus 105. And I kind of think we're going to see a over 1.5 in this spot. You know, Gary's been billed as this knockout artist. He's got slick striking. That's great. But he's also got solid grappling. Song Kenan, long layoff. So maybe they're just throwing him to the wolves here and he dies early in this fight. But I could also see him getting into it, mixing it up with Ian Gary, putting him on the back foot, getting some respect. And maybe Gary taking a little bit longer than we're expecting to get the finish here. I don't like the total. Over 1.5 minus 125. That's the lean. I'm definitely not betting it. Marc-André Barriault taking on Julian Marquez, another 1.5 here. The over is minus 170, and this is suspect to me because Marc-André Barriault fights almost always go over. If anybody's finishing in this spot, it's Julian Marquez. Now, Marquez's durability does seem to be in question. His chin's been touched a couple times recently, so maybe Marc-André can finish this guy. He's training at Factory X. You got to think maybe that offense is even sharper this time around, but I think Marc-André just kind of does what Marc-André does. If he gets out there, gets the takedowns, forces the grappling, this thing's going over 1.5, minus 170. Viviane Araujo taking on Amanda Ribas, another 2.5. The over is minus 250. The under is plus 220. And I actually think there's an outside shot of a finish here, but it only comes from one side. You guys know how I feel about that. I need both fighters contributing to an under if I'm going to actually play it. Amanda Ribas, we've seen her react very poorly to strikes. Her chin is a huge concern. She's been knocked out twice already. She's fighting up a weight class. I don't think she belongs there. Vivi hits hard on the feet. We saw that last time against Grasso. She's also got the wrestling upside in this spot. Both these women are BJJ black belts, so I'm not really expecting a submission here in this spot. Vivi, I think, can control Ribas on the ground, on the feet. It's going to be kind of a kickboxing match. If Ribas has her way, she'll win a decision. If Vivi has her way, I think she can club and sub Ribas, or maybe even TKO her if she gets her down on the ground and rocks her. So I do think there's some chance on that under 2.5, but plus 220, it's not juicy enough. I'd rather play Vivi inside the distance straight up because I just don't see a finish coming from Amanda, quite frankly. Trevin Jones taking on Cody Garbrandt, a 1.5 here for these boys. Over 1.5 is minus 125. Under 1.5 is plus 105. If history tells us anything, it's that Cody's going to go out there and slug it out and we're going to get a one-round fight. But I actually think with his job on the line, he's going to go out there and play it a little bit more safe. Trevin Jones has been relatively tough. We've seen him dig deep before and stay in a fight even after he's been rocked or hurt. So I think he can hang in this spot, and I think Cody actually might go to the wrestling for once in his life because he just straight up needs to get a win. With the low volume offense of Trevin Jones and Cody trying to protect that chin, I think we could squeeze over 1.5. This would be your butthole pucker of the week because you're just not sure if it's going to get there and you're scared and you're terrified every second of this fight. But I think over 1.5 is the way to look. Dricus du Plessis taking on Derek Brunson, another 1.5. Over 1.5, minus 155. Under 1.5 is plus 135. And I do, again, kind of like the over. Now, both these guys have massive offensive upside. We've seen it from both of them. Derek Brunson almost had Jared Cannonier out in the first round in his last fight. You got to keep that in mind. Even though he's talked retirement, even though he's coming off a knockout, he's incredibly dangerous, incredibly strong, incredibly athletic. Dricus du Plessis almost had Darren Till out of there in the first round. Took him to the third to get it done. But we've seen that he can kind of gas out and then find a second wind in the midst of a fight, reload, and keep on coming. I can see that kind of being what happens here. I think Derek Brunson is going to try and neutralize du Plessis early in the fight, and then as he starts to wear out, tire down, du Plessis will fight his way back into it. Maybe we get a late finish, but I actually think the over 1.5 might hit here too. Next up, we got Bo Nickal finally making his UFC debut, taking on Jamie Pickett. A 1.5 is your total, and this one's nuts. Over 1.5 is plus 260. The under 1.5 is minus 300. The disrespect! These bookies are expecting Bo Nickal to completely walk through Jamie Pickett, and I get it, quite frankly. Bo Nickal, massive grappling edge, massive wrestling edge. We've seen Jamie Pickett give up the subs before. We've seen him knocked out before as well. Bo kind of can win this fight however and whenever he wants, in my opinion. I would almost be tempted to go contrarian and say over 1.5 and say Jamie's good enough to hang in there for this one. But I kind of think Bo takes him down and makes him look silly in that first round on the mat. I'm saying Bo Nickal round 1 sub. Jalin Turner taking on Mateusz Gamrot, another 2.5 total here. The over 2.5 is plus 125. The under 2.5 is minus 145. Oh boy, and I think I like violence in this spot. Mateusz Gamrot is coming in on short notice. He's actually a pretty big hitter. We've seen him finish a couple people with power strikes. Jalin Turner's been rocked and wobbled before, so that chin is something we have to be a little bit concerned about at least. And don't talk to me about the offense of Jalin Turner. This guy's a round one monster. He's so big. He's so long. His knees are vicious. His hands are heavy. He does a good job of keeping you at range, and he's got submissions on you. The club and sub is there, especially with Mateusz coming in on short notice after being rocked in his last couple fights. This is violence all day for me. I really think one of these guys is going to find their way out in this spot. Gamrot by decision is definitely on the table. Don't get me wrong. If he wants to lay on top of Jalin Turner and tie up those long-ass legs for 15 minutes, that's totally possible. But every other option under the board is available, and minus 145 doesn't seem like a bad price tag for what we've seen Jalin do in the past. Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Geoff Neal, another 1.5 total. The over 1.5 is minus 145. The under 1.5 is plus 125. And I actually like that over 1.5 again. I've talked about it before. I think this is the Gilbert Burns fight for Shavkat Rakhmonov. We saw Chimaev finally get a big step up and struggle when he took that walk into the deep end of the division. That's what this is for Shavkat. I think Geoff Neal's going to show up and really turn a couple of heads. I think he's going to show up and remind people that he's a very good fighter in this spot. Now, whether or not he gets his hand raised at the end of it, we'll find out. But the way he kept Bilal to 0 of 7 on takedowns, and that was several years ago, I think he can put up a fight when it comes to the grappling of Shavkat, and then it comes down to the striking. Geoff Neal is super methodical with his striking. We've seen Shavkat get a little flustered, go to that spinning heel kick one too many times. I don't know if Geoff Neal's going to get caught by that thing, and if he just continues to plod forward and jab the way he does, we could end up with a very close fight here. So I'm kind of expecting this over 1.5 minus 145 to actually be a half decent look on this card. Alexa Grasso in the co-main event taking on Valentina Shevchenko. Your total is 4.5. The over 4.5 is plus 125. The under 4.5 is minus 145. Now bear in mind we use Superbook Sports for all the lines here on these shows. I lean to the over, but I actually would like to look out there for an alternative total. I would be looking for a 3.5. I think this fight is going to come down to the toughness of Alexa Grasso. We've seen major grappling improvements from her. She is tough. She is durable. She hangs in these fights. Her boxing is slick. So I think defensively she's going to be solid enough to kickbox with Valentina Shevchenko on the feet for 25 minutes. It comes down to can she hang on the ground. From what we've seen from her defensively, she does a good job of getting her guard back. She causes scrambles. She gets up pretty well. She actually has decent front level takedown defense. Her last couple fights, she's been showing major improvements in that area. So I think she can hang on. And I don't know that I want to bet Grasso on the money line. My prediction is Valentina by decision, but that gives me a decent number on the over 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5. That may be the way to look at this one. Plus 125, over 4.5 for Grasso to just hang in there for me. I think I'm looking that way, and that might actually be a bet. Ciryl Gane in your main event, welcoming back the King John Jones. Another 4.5 total here. The over 4.5 is minus 150. The under 4.5 is plus 130. And there's just so many questions. I've talked all week about this fight. There's so many questions that we need answered. John Jones is absolutely huge, moving up to heavyweight to 265. You see some of the pictures floating out there. One got tweeted just today that shows kind of what he looks like when he's more in a better posture and flexing. He looks fucking massive, as opposed to the one where he looks like he's just got a spare tire around his waist. So he definitely has put on some muscle for this fight. Ciryl Gane is mostly a decisionator. John Jones used to be mostly a decisionator. But if you remember way back when Michael Bisping tried to defend his belt from George St. Pierre, who had been retired and off and out of the game for quite some time, he came back, up a weight class, and he absolutely ran through poor Michael Bisping. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see something like that from John Jones on Saturday. He is out here talking about chasing greatness. He looks like he's motivated, and for someone like John, I actually do believe the motivation is a big deal. I know people kind of scoff at that, but the mental state of somebody who's been untouchable since they turned 21 years old and they've been fighting monsters for 10, 15 years, and then they're just bored with the lack of challenge at this point. If he is actually motivated to come up here at heavyweight and take out these monsters, he could be a new version of John Jones. He could be a better version of John Jones. It looked like he was on the decline before he left, but again, that could come down to motivation. There's too many questions. I don't know. I'm probably not betting this main event whatsoever, but I will say, I'll say under. I'll say violence. I'll say John Jones gets Ciryl Gane down to the ground at some point. Maybe he can get a TKO or a submission. Or if John Jones really is shot, if he's not doing as well as maybe he thinks he will. Ciryl Gane, the bigger man, the more explosive man, the more active fighter. Maybe he actually gets him with a big body shot and Tuivasas him and gets him out of there in, the third or the fourth round because the weight is just too much of a size difference. So I'll say violence in the main event, believe it or not. That's the Total Takedown, folks. Thank you so much for watching the show. Hit the like button on your way out. Make sure you follow me over on socials at DieHardMMAPod, where I'll be tweeting out and posting on Instagram all my official action. I give you a read on every single fight on the card, but only my official bets go to the record, so make sure you follow me there if you want to actually see those. Thank you again. Good luck on your DGN action. We'll see you tomorrow for the undefeated post-weigh-in show and, of course, the Sharp Action Report. Let's roll.